Are we live? Are we live? Uh-oh.
Looks like
Uh-oh.
it.
I think so. I think so. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Miss Jennifer Yanez, introduce herself to our listeners and viewers. You might remember she's been on the show as her alter ego, her crime fighting self, Miss J.R. Castle. Um, but when she's not pretending to be a superhero, she's also Jennifer, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. I wear so many hats, go by many names, and so it's always like, who am I right now? And what am I supposed to be doing? So today, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm here as Jennifer Yanez, CEO, co-founder of Archimedes Books Publishing and Wolfpack Entertainment Production Company. That's right. We're getting into film, and so we are all about the same thing we love here on this podcast, right? The blades, the blasters, the stars, the adventures, the camaraderie, the quest. That's what we're doing with all of our content, from the books on to film as well.
All right. The next part of the introduction, dear listener, is how we first found them. So I actually met her through her husband, and Jonathan Yanez and I met back before the dawn of time when we used to carve our stories onto stone tablets. Obviously, Jennifer's much younger than him, much younger, but I met her through him, and the three of us share Stargate memes. So it's a match made in heaven. And what's not to love about Stargate, right?
Right. And yeah, it goes back a long time in this sort of group and industry. There's people that fade in, fade out, life happens in different seasons, but it's been really cool to say that we have known you for so long, and in person and online too. So I feel like somehow like we have those really cool core memories together.
So Jonathan and I met through, I want to say, the 20 Books group, and I was
Mm-hmm.
looking for interviews when we were still sci-fi shenanigans. So this is 2017 ish. And
Yeah,
so he was
about
one of
when
our
we
first.
started.
Yeah, he was one of the first authors to say yes to the interview, because when you're first starting out, nobody knows who you are. Are you a waste of their time? Whatever. And I get it. Like, understand you got to build content. And so in the beginning, anyone that said yes was our instant friend. And so he's been. And now, of course, we're on season. We did 2.5 seasons of sci-fi shenanigans, and now we're on season 3 of Blasters and Blades. And he's been on a bunch of times. He's always fun to talk to. Although he always makes me feel like I need to drink like more caffeine to keep up with him because he's got so much energy.
That
Like,
is such it's an ongoing funny thing in our house. Like if you're real life tropes like within the family, it's his energy. It's either really high or like really low. It's not that he's manic, it's just that our schedules are so different to be sure. He's up
yeah,
at 5 a.m. writing. He's like 100% go. Like that's just his person, right? And then by dinner time, it is just like downhill from there. And I tell him like, your eyes are glossy, you look tired, you need more water. And he's just like trying to get to that 8 o'clock point where the kids are in bed asleep and it's like almost his own bedtime. Whereas I am up working or researching and whatnot till like 11 o'clock at night, and then I'll read and then go to sleep, and I don't wake up till 8. So by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just reaching my peak of my energy and good to go for the night. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. His
I
full
I
force energy.
jokingly call him. I jokingly call him a cyborg wolf because he does the whole wolf pack as your guys' branding, but he's part
Mm-hmm.
cyborg because only part machine makes that possible. I just don't. He's just all the time. I'm like, dude, take a deep breath. It's like, stop writing for a year so we can all catch up. Although
It's really,
since you,
really, uh huh.
I was just say, since you guys started going for the film too, once you got that first approach, and we'll get into that, how that all
Mm-hmm.
came about. But once that started back when, he slowed down on the writing to give the rest of us room to catch up.
Yes, and that
So it
was
was very nice
important.
of him, considerate.
Right? Yeah. So we convinced him to pump the brakes a bit. But what we wanted to do is, I mean, not that we didn't have depth, but it was at this pace. What if we could slow down a little bit and The books wouldn't be so frequent, but they could be a little longer, and they could have we can go deeper with the marketing schedule and interject some other things in between. And so I think we're going into our second or third, maybe it's hard to tell because even though we're only midway through this year, like everything's already forecasted for next year. But it'll be going into our third year of this new rhythm. And so, like, in a dream world for him, I think he's writing 1 to 2 books a year and putting out 1 film a year. And so, yeah, we'll see if we can, when we can get there, not if, like when we can get there. Yeah.
I have found like one of the things that Jonathan's very and you too, but like since it's his universe where we're talking about, he's
Yeah.
very he's not just positive about himself, like he pushes that onto others. Like I remember when we first met in Vegas and we were drinking at the bar, because that's what it's really what everyone went to, not just alcohol, just in general, to socialize with the other authors. And
Hmm.
someone was talking about how fast I wrote and how I didn't really have much of a chance if I didn't write faster. And so I was like, dude, look, with my brain damage, I work twice as hard to get half as much productivity as the rest of you. I'm doing just fine. And that's when he looked at the guy who's more established than both of us at the time. I won't name names because this could not come off as nice. And the guy was otherwise very friendly. I don't mean it like as an
Hmm.
attack, but Jonathan was like, no, you're never competing against everyone else. You're competing against yourself. Did you do better today than you did yesterday? That's all that matters.
Yes.
And that's all
Yes.
your readers care about, is because they want to see growth. And then I read, after we had that conversation and I had that light bulb moment, I read Jack Campbell. John Henry is his rebranding, his birth name. He wrote the Lost Fleet series, and you could
Hmm.
they were published TradPub, so they were years apart between all of them. I listened to them back to back, and you could hear the author and the narrator together, because at the time it was a new narrator. He's the one who narrated the Reservist for the Galaxy's Edge universe for me. But at the time, he
Oh,
was a nobody. And you could listen to both of them get better as the series went on. And I'm like, okay, that's what he meant. Because I was like rooting for him as the prose are getting better, the descriptions are getting better. I'm like, okay, I get it now. So
yes.
he's very encouraging on the fitness too, which I think in the writing nerd community, sometimes we forget the body we're living in, not the worlds we're living in on page, matters too. And so
Hmm.
I sent him a thing when I hit the I lost 30 pounds mark. And I said, now it's time to kick it up a notch. And he's like, no more half-assing it, only full ass. And I'm like, no, I want to lose the ass. He's like, oh, okay. So
Yeah,
anyway,
no, imagine living with that guy 24/7. JR, what do you
you'd almost need caffeine just to like make it like, okay, hold on, John, let me take this sip of the coffee. Okay, we're good now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, like I'm a slow starter to my morning. Um,
Me
I'm
too. And
very,
my son is
yeah,
an insomniac. And not only is he an insomniac, he's very cheerful in the morning. I'm like, dude, not enough coffee yet. Pump the brakes. So I
yeah,
live with that with my son. I don't know how
yeah.
people do
And
that.
Jonathan's like, I'm like, coming out of the room for the first time in the day, like one eye open, and he's like, so did you get my message on Discord? This, that, this, that. And I'm like, let me brush my teeth, let me get some coffee, splash some water on my face, and we can begin thinking. I remember for our upcoming project, we were recording videos, right? We got to record some videos to like market it and explain it. And so it was in the morning, and he's ready to go. We got it all set up, got the cameras, the lighting, the everything. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like grab coffee and I'll meet you. I couldn't deliver a line. I could not deliver a line straight. At one point, he's like, "Hi, I'm Jonathan Yanez, author and writer for this project." And I was like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer Yanez, writer, director." Wait, what am I doing? And I was like, we gotta put this later in the day, or I can't do this.
I will say
Yeah, and that's mhm,
he's very willing to share that though. Like he used to be a trainer. I know he still does some. So if you want full
mhm,
training advice, you're gonna have to hire someone. But if you're friends with him and you get a general question or two, he has no problem helping. And I like that because I do the same thing. Like you got to pay everything forward, right?
mhm.
It's a karma thing, and I like people that appreciate that worldview. So
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get questions for people how I lost the 30 pounds. It's two simple things. I downloaded and paid for the app. It's called Lose It app with an exclamation point, and it lets me track everything I eat, and it coincides that with how much water you drink, how much steps you take. And I added that so I knew exactly what I was putting in my body. And it's surprisingly, when you cook at home, man, I'm like, I get this at home, 500 calories, and I'm full. Get the same meal, same portion size at a restaurant, 1,500 calories, and you're still hungry. It's all the
Yeah,
chemicals and stuff they put in it. And so when you cook for
it
yourself,
is.
it's crazy what you can do.
It is.
So
I know it's not like a fitness or health podcast or episode. It's probably like a Jonathan episode, but yeah, we're huge proponents of that. Like cooking at home, every meal is meat and veg or fruit, veg. Like I say veg, but it's not really veg because fruit is good too, is really good. But we had a friend who was doing Weight Watchers, and he asked like, "But can I eat bananas? Like bananas have a lot of sugar." And then his coach told him like, "You're not here because you ate too many bananas. Like you're fine with the bananas." It's like, but that was the thing that stuck. Like you're not here for the weight loss community because you ate too much fruit. Like that's not what got you here. Fruit is an issue. You know, if you're diabetic and you have high glycemic issues, but really it's like, but protein helps balance those insulin spikes. So a lot of like pregnant women who test positive for gestational diabetes, they will be given a regimen on what to eat, and it'll be like strawberries with string cheese or low GI berries on the low GI fruit level, low GI. Yeah, it's a good low GI fruit. So you can have like berries with cottage cheese because of the protein in there helps to make sure there's no spikes. So anyway, if you eat meat and you eat it with just fruit and vegetables, like just about every meal, then like you will be good to go. And then drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day, if you ever wanted to know that.
yeah, I can't remember how they figured it out. I just know that I was told I need to drink 128 ounces, so a gallon and some change a day, and they did
Mm-hmm.
that based on my weight. So I don't remember the exact
Yep.
formula. I just do it. I will say that so with the I just added walking. I couldn't walk 1,000 steps without like huffing and puffing, and now I walk 6,000. The American Heart Association says 10,000 steps a day at this point because I still only have a set time. If you can't walk faster, then you have to walk farther. I can't always do that either. So what I've started doing is wearing a weighted vest. So that's it. And then on the
Ooh.
food side, just tracking what you eat makes a huge
Mm-hmm.
difference. And then I find that most of the time my bad eating comes when I'm in a rush, like life
Yeah.
happens. So when you meal prep and you've got all those meals, like I can pull something out of the microwave or out of the freezer, throw it in the microwave, and I've got a well balanced meal because I made essentially my own microwave meals. But
Mm-hmm.
then you got to worry about like shelf life of that isn't as long. So I recently got into canning. So I can some of my own soups and stuff that are really good.
Oh, that's a whole
It's
nother
like an addiction.
conversation for us. That
It's
I
fun.
love
It's an
that.
addiction.
Yeah.
I've got like 28 cans now, and I'm like, I've got 7 more cans. What can I can? And so I I over prepped for COVID. Not so much that I worried. Like some of these people went crazy about all the toilet paper. I just live in a hurricane prone area. I know what my neighbors do when there's a panic,
Right.
and so I was preparing for the stupidity of large groups of humans together, not so much anything else, which I would still do
Mm-hmm.
today. But I overestimated how much my teenage boys would eat. And so I had a
Mm.
lot of meat in the freezer that's close to, where it's going to start freezer burning. I'm like, if I can it and cook it now, then I get another 3 to 5 years out of the same produce and I don't have to throw anything away.
Nice.
And so I started
Yes.
canning. It's
Okay.
it's it's such a relaxing hobby too, because like you get to experiment with flavors and it's fun. It's fun. I dream of a homestead. If I sell enough books, I'm going to buy a couple acres out in the country and call it good. I'll still write, but at least I won't have all the crowds around me. But yeah, so
Yeah,
that's my
I
new
love
hobby.
it.
But
Oh
that's
my
it. So
goodness.
lose it
I
out, people. Try it and just walk.
am
Just
all
walk.
about
I
it.
don't do no gym membership. I don't go lift weights. In fact, until I hit under 300 pounds, my dietitian and doctors don't want me to because they overdose us on cortisone to keep us in the field. So I was getting shots at each knee when I was in Iraq for a year, and that's a fat soluble medicine, means it's in your fat cells. So as you lose weight, I have to constantly monitor that I'm not re-releasing too much of that at once into my system. Um, the reason I mentioned nutritionist though is I showed her, the VA hooked me up with one, what I was doing through the Lose It app, and she says that's what I would have told you to do too. So keep doing it. So if you want to know, at
Perfect.
least with my situation, nutritionist said the app was good for me. So take that with a
That's
grain of
great.
salt.
And
We
then
are not your doctors.
you can listen to audiobooks too while you're walking, so you're not really
I
losing.
do. So
Yeah,
that's my trick
anytime.
is I listen to podcasts and audiobooks, but I won't let myself, if I'm not driving somewhere or walking, because sometimes you have to drive errands. So it's my way to disconnect from traffic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my all of my trauma in Iraq happened on the road. So for me, driving is stressful. So instead of eating crap while I drive, now I listen to audiobooks. But I found a couple times, in fact, the Forsaken Mercenary books were one. I'm like, I really need to stop. I'm out of my allotted time for this walk. But two more laps won't kill me because I have to hear the end of this chapter because I wanted to know what happened. So
That's
that's
like the
that's the good
terrible thing
motivation.
about those books is that every uh you are like I didn't get it. So okay, I don't that's about the time that I stopped reading all of Jonathan's books because there were just too many. And
Yeah, I was going to
we
ask that.
had, yeah, that was right about the time. So like there was too many and I had to focus on the marketing. And at that time I think I was still working at my ad agency full time. And we had editors, we had beta readers, we had advanced early readers, we had somebody was producing the audio. So there was like there was no reason for me to do any of that anymore. So it wasn't until I think we're during the German translations that I started to see more of the actual content of the book. But we have recently done a whole new marketing uh, development stuff with that series. And so having to dive deep, like super deep into all of the reviews and see like what is it about this series that really resonated with people. Like I understood that it is a near future sci-fi thriller and that has elements that feel like Jason Bourne in there, and a little bit of like that in the earlier part, like that Roadhouse with Dalton, and this like camaraderie between him and his leader. So it was like, okay, I get it. It's fast paced and everyone's like breakneck, like high impact action, like all of this stuff. Like it's addicting. Like I got through it so much quicker than I anticipated. Or I'm on book 8 or was it? I'm finishing up book 8 and I just started last week. I'm like, what in the world, people? Like, you can't help it. You can't put it down. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Like, I love them, but how is this possible? Well, going back through the book in preparation for the film, I was like just going to read the first couple of chapters, like 5 chapters later. And I was like, oh my gosh, like exactly what you're saying is you don't realize that you're leading from one scene into the next because you're just like, I have to feel this resolution. And then you get to it. And by the time you're out of that resolution, you're like, well, now I'm gone this hole. Like, what's going on? I got to get this resolution and what's going to happen with that. And yeah, it was so strange to experience something that I'd heard about for so long with that series.
Yeah, that's why I like people that keep the stories like you do grimdark, and it's a slog for me to listen. I know people love it, so I'm not yucking your yum, but like that's why I like the good versus evil, the classic sort of tropes that made sci-fi what it is, and the heroism winning in the end, like the positive message, because there's enough darkness in the world. I've seen it firsthand. So for me, I
Mm-hmm.
like messages where it might not, it's not that they don't have trials and tribulations, but in the end of the day, the good guys are going to win. Most of them will come home, and you know the darkness will be pushed back for another day, another episode, whatever. And I like that Jonathan writes that way too, because it keeps it so you don't have to worry. Like I never read a book and be like, oh, this character's definitely not going to die. Well, the main character in Forsaken Mercenary, since there are X number of books out in the series, you can kind of guess if you're coming at it late. But if you didn't know that going in, it's never feels like plot armor is going to keep this character or that character alive, right? I mean, obviously the
Yeah.
main character will stay at least till the last book in the series. Generally speaking, that's just a trope of the genre. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, like everything feels like it's on the table. But I also don't feel like Jonathan's as much of a sadist as say like a George R.R. Martin is to his characters, and it
Right.
makes to get sucked in because you don't feel like, am I going to like this person just to have him slaughtered on page 2, kind of thing.
Right. You're not going into it with that kind of trepidation. I think you really nailed that. Like, that was something I don't think in the beginning, from a marketing perspective and from, marketing, I mean, it twofold is branding and marketing as in communicating to potential new readers what this is about. It, we didn't do that intentionally. It's just part of his DNA that comes across in his stories is that it's simple, good versus evil. Even the bad guys might have some redeemable characteristics about them, but at the end of the day, it is classic sci-fi, good guys versus bad guys. The good guys have to win. You're not walking like, yeah, that trepidation of like, is this character gonna turn, are they going to turn in a different way? Am I going to feel deceived? Am I going to leave this with a heavy moment? And there's a couple of authors that I talked to as well, and they're like, people don't leave this book with angst. With that's their intention, and that's what's Jonathan. Exactly what you're saying, JR, is there's enough darkness, there's enough heavy stuff. And you know what, and if people want to consume that, they need that in their life, by all means they can go get it elsewhere. But sometimes you just want to feel good and go on a good fun adventure and get that like heart pumping and adrenaline going, and have like a good time with it. And I think that's what a lot of like classic sci-fi, whether it's in film or in books, like that's what really bolster the genre in the beginning, because you think about the times that they came from. Like I was listening or talking with someone recently, actually they were talking about the psychology of genres. And so within the Amish, I don't know if your readers would know this, but Amish romance is like a huge genre right now. And it could be because it's safe, it's simpler times, it's low tech, the relationships aren't as strained. Like it's a lot of times it's like that old cozy feeling, and that's a natural reaction to uncertain times and fast-paced lives and high-tech lives, and that becomes a safe space. Well, for people who are coming to routine, and especially you think about the 50s, yes, we had the Cold War and all that, but like life, standard life, like typical life, it changed because like there was manufacturing, there was economic boom, there were suburban living. There was not just like, am I going to die at the factory today? Am I going to get my hand chopped off and risk crazy machinery? And so life became a little bit more stable, but so it gave everybody that sense of comfort. But then there was just this human nature to want some adventure, and that's where like sci-fi could really go big. And so folks now, and probably forever, like are going to look to the stars. If you're in a good spot, you're going to look to the stars. You probably don't want to like get too scared and see what's looking back at you. And that's where like the cozy kind of sci-fi settings come into play, of like what you were saying. It's not like George R.R. Martin and you're going to like a character and their head's going to be served on the platter in the next couple of chapters.
So I think I was thinking about this while you were talking. I think because Jonathan writes the same style of stories I do, in the positivity. Not to say that, like I said, the good guys can still die, but
Yeah.
overall, if they die, they don't die for nothing. Like I'll give you the
Right.
perfect example. Have you seen Serenity, where Wash dies? They had a good chance to make that death mean something. Like he died heroically, saving everyone else, even though it cost him his life. And then it was like, nope, they just crashed and randomly. I hate to give you spoilers, but like they threw away what could have been a grandiose, like huge death scene that was momentous, and they just
Yeah.
wasted it. And so I don't mind when main characters die, but you got to make it mean something. Like I get in combat sometimes, like I lost my best friend escorting a convoy, no joke, of bubble wrap and office chairs. Like in the grander scheme of things, that meant nothing to the war effort. Had that been,
Right.
I don't know, beans and bullets to the middle of besieged troops in Bastogne, like that would have been entirely different. At least it meant something, right? And so I try to
Yeah.
approach fiction the same way. Like if I want my characters to die, like sometimes people just die. Like I get that, but make it to characters you don't really care as much about. For the main characters or main secondary characters, if they die, make it mean something. And that's one of the things. So it's almost like Stargate or Star Trek or even GI Joe, where they end every episode laughing. That episodic positivity that you get, but
Mm-hmm.
the risks of George R.R. Martin, because good triumphing over evil has costs, right? Like I would
Right.
see that as the
Absolutely.
perfect kind of pairing.
Yeah,
But
and
like I
it
said,
goes
I just
back to like some of those honor codes, right? Like an
yeah,
honorable death, like Beowulf and Ronin and like all of that stuff. Like there is honor. The Vikings, right? They wanted to die in the battlefield and fighting for something. There's honor in death, and even today, how we live our lives can imply like and inform the way we die. Like yeah, it could be tragic and senseless with an accident, like you know people running red lights, texting on their phone, whatever. You could say, oh, that was senseless. But because of how an individual lives their lives, can inform that death. And so, um, and it still leaves you with that sense of like pride in that character and in that moment and what they did to spur on the greater good, even with their death. Yeah,
It reminds me of
really.
that quote from Gladiator, which everyone quotes, where Maximus is in the arena talking to Marcus Aurelius, I believe, and he
Mm-hmm.
says essentially, "What we do in life echoes in eternity," was the message, and so that
Mm.
comes back to like making it matter. I think that matters more than people realize, because until I started thinking about things like you were saying from the marketing angle, you don't always realize why you like what you like. Like I've
Right.
never had to do the right to market, because what I read and what I write is also what other people like, but I never really thought why until you start trying to come up with your marketing plan, right? Like I get, that, but that sense where in the end the good guys win, because sometimes in life, you get robbed and nothing happens to the bad guy because reasons, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be kind of gloomy, and you want a better outcome sometimes in fiction than reality can give you. So I think that's where that stuff
Right.
comes into play. But
Yeah,
we are
and
at the
it's that
25-minute
whole.
mark. I
Oh
was gonna
shoot.
say,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it's a whole left brain, right brain thing. So your left brain might know intuitively what you like and what those stories are about, and how to communicate them and how to make them happen naturally in your writing. It's the right brain who's trying to define those terms in order
Yeah,
to market it creatively, which goes back to the left brain. But yeah, absolutely, and that's why, well, where Jonathan and I kind of complement each other and that whole left brain, right brain, like ping ponging between us, though that ethos and how to not be too on the nose as we communicate it. Because I wouldn't be like, the world is dark, you need some levity. Don't worry, the good guys win. It's a good time. Plus, there's lots of action and a ton of combat. You'll like this book. But it goes back to the whole creative aspect of like, okay, well, like you can't tell the person that's why they want this story, but they can relay the emotional aspect of why they would enjoy that story.
and it goes that left brain, right brain is also why they tell, if you're, for the authors among us, it's why they tell you that you can't always take on face value someone's review, because they
Mm.
might not always know why they didn't like it. So if they sometimes why they say things just felt off, what they're trying to tell you is the pacing is wrong. And I couldn't tell you on paper what the formula is for good pacing. I just do it because I read so much. It comes intuitively. I don't have to think about it. And that's the same
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. Like you know some things subconsciously almost sometimes just from that repetitive action. It's that muscle memory with your brain. It's how, it's
Yeah.
why they train you by rote in martial arts and in the military, because you can do things at a certain level where you're no longer thinking about them. In fact, if you tried to think about it, you could forget why, and mess your mojo up, because you've trained your body not to think about certain things, just to do it. And I think you do
That's
that when
so
you read
great.
a lot.
Yep, absolutely. I'm wearing my karate shirt right now, and that's exactly what my sensei says. He's like, don't think about it, just move. Like, just do the move. You know this already. And so, and yeah, we practice the same thing over and over. And then why they take just the training and the forms and then move you over to when we're sparring, and they're like, you got 2 minutes, and I just want you to practice these moves and counter moves without thinking about it. So it's not a drill like, okay, now you do your moves, now you counter. It's like you don't know, and your body is acting and reacting intuitively, and it's just such
Yeah.
it's a very cool thing. But then there are those people who have lots of information and books on what pacing should be from a technical standpoint too.
And I'm not denoting that, and I've even used some of them to sort of help
Oh,
me understand why I
yeah,
was
no,
doing
I'm
things.
saying for
But
people who may not have
yeah,
that intuition yet and would like to know more, like, okay, from the right brain, like, so what is that? So for the right
I mean,
brain, people who are trying to get that.
I was the kid who got in trouble in the third grade for sneaking adult books. Like I was reading Stephen King in the third
Well,
grade
you got to define
behind my
adult books in third grade, JR. What adult books were
this
you
is
taking into your third grade
I was
class?
reading It in the third grade.
Okay, grown
Stephen
up
King's
books.
It. Grown up books. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm sorry. We had this conversation pre-show too.
Yeah.
When you say adult in something, it implies you're right. You're right. I was
Mhm.
reading books not written for young adults or even young people, because I
Okay.
wasn't even a young adult in third grade. And so when you read that much for that long, you realize you're probably not the target audience as far as your intuitive understanding of certain structures, because you've
Mhm.
just read so many books. Um,
Mhm.
And I think that's also why some authors have trouble, just as a general rule, is because the average person isn't multi-genre. Like the average reader will read one narrow genre, and that's it. If you're the kind of person that will read anything and everything, you're already a statistical outlier. And that's the
Oh,
thing I have
okay.
to remind myself with marketing, is because like I'm not normal. Like I'm just as happy reading, nonfiction as I am fiction. Like I read all of it, and that's
Yeah.
not normal. We
Oh, well,
interviewed
that's a good point.
back when we were still Sci-Fi Shenanigans. We interviewed Kristen Catherine Rush, who has been around for a few minutes, and that's one of the things we talked about in the pre-show is how much, by reading everything, we make ourselves outliers, and then add to that anyone who came up in the digital age. Now it's so much easier to narrow down to, I just want to read books about planting potatoes. I don't care about the carrots or the radishes. Just give me the potatoes. And it's easier to do that now with online stuff than it used to be at the library, where it's like, well, I've read all of that. Let me try this new genre that looks okay-ish because I haven't read it yet. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's only gotten worse in the digital age. That sort
That
of
makes it's that we're feeding our
genre
own
loyalty.
algorithm.
Yeah, basically. But this is us, if you haven't noticed, dear listener, with the last episode that just aired, the fireside chat with Nick and I. We're trying to do more off the cuff interviews and less rote. So you will have noticed that we didn't use the formula with Jen, mostly because we've been friends so long that I forgot we had the formula for this one. So we just started talking. But one of the staples of this podcast is the religion question, and that will never go away. So are you ready for this, man?
As ready as
All
I
right.
can be.
Warehouse 13, Battlestar Galactica, or Lost in Space?
This changed.
And we mix it up because you've been on before. You've heard the other ones.
Oh, I came prepared for the other ones. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go with Lost in Space. I think it feels. I mean, they're all adventurous, but that one definitely feels more like an adventure, and um, yeah. I mean, they all have risk, and they all have. Yeah, I liked the family. I liked, and then it could be my season of life too. Like I think I would have said Battlestar Galactica previous to the season of life, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Lost in Space.
Okay, so which Lost in Space? The one that the movie that came out in the late '90s, the original black and white series, or the Netflix series?
Um, I'm gonna go again, season of life with the more recent Netflix series, but I also think that like the film before that kind of like informed this. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's kind of like you can't
So
appreciate one as much if you hadn't watched the previous, but for this one, yeah, I just like the family interactions. It adds a different dynamic. And I get, that there's like that whole family dynamic within some of the others, but um but just knowing like the risk involved and that fear, there's like those other fears you have as parents, and it's an adventure as a spouse, and making those hard decisions, um, and then seeing them succeed and seeing them shine with their knowledge and their gifts, and that's kind of like life, right? Like we're kind of going through and trying different things. If you're gonna have that adventure, and you're gonna get lost sometimes.
yeah, I think I like all three for different reasons. The original one, because it was sort of groundbreaking in its time for the concept
Yes.
of space exploration. It was definitely targeted to young boys, I think, as the audience. So Will
Mm-hmm.
Robinson and his robot were the main characters. I like
Mm-hmm.
that the movie that came in the '90s and then the Netflix series let Penny have as much of a role. She was as much a character as Will was. I liked that, and they flushed the rest of the family out in a ways, because the sisters in the original were just eye candy. Like they were there to wear the, I guess, spandex, polyester, whatever that was. It's hard to tell in old black and whites, but like they were just eye candy. They didn't play as much a role in the plot. It was mostly Will Robinson, the robot, and the pesky scientist and their shenanigans, and then the family was just sort of the backdrop. But
Yeah.
like I said, I will never fault it when you target to the audience you're trying to get. Like sometimes something isn't bad just because you're not the target audience, right? Like there's
Right.
plenty of stuff that's good book qualitatively. I'm not the target audience, and I don't read it. Like I'm not reading the Amish romance. Just not my thing.
Right.
Needs
No,
needs more
absolutely.
guns, and coffee, more guns and coffee. Um, but so like I like each of them for their own reasons, but I did like the way they also did the doctor character. Like they gender swapped it, but they did it in a way that worked for the plot. It didn't feel like it was just checking a box. When it feels like it's
Hmm.
checking a box, it feels cheap, and I tend to not like it. Battlestar Galactica did that too with the reboot where they made Starbuck a woman. And then her relationship to the family was that much richer because she had dated the younger brother that died, who
Hmm.
incidentally she was his piloting instructor and passed him even though he wasn't good enough because daddy. Like all of that mattered more later because you knew all that
Hmm.
backstory that was different. Like I didn't have a problem with that. So if they did it right in those two instances, I think. So I really liked all of
Yeah.
them for different reasons.
Yep. I agree. I absolutely agree. If you were going to, if we're going to make those kinds of changes, they need to have just like and anything you're developing, right? It needs to have a reason that adds to the goal of your work, your IP, whatever the project. And so if you're going to swap somebody, is it to check a box, or you're going to, give us character a backstory or flesh them out more? Like, how are they moving this project forward? How are they enhancing at every level, every character change, every character addition? All of that needs to be a plus. It needs to be plussing that viewer experience, and not to be clever, not to have something shiny you've always wanted to do as a director or writer, not to check some sort of agenda, or like, or contrarily, like go against an agenda at the sake of what the ethos of that project is about.
Yeah, like I said, I don't. I like I said, I don't want preaching even when I agree with you. Terry Pratchett, I think. No, Terry
Mhm,
Goodkin did the Sort of Truth series. Terry Goodkin.
mm.
He is very much influenced by his love of Ayn Rand and his libertarianisms. I don't disagree with a lot of what he wrote, but towards the later books in that series, it started to get so preachy, and I'm like, dude, just give us the wizards and the swords and the Mord Sith, right? Like, I don't want to
Yes.
get preached at. If we want to get preached at, we have churches for that, right? Like, just tell me a fun story. I feel that way whether I agree with the person or not. So I like when you make changes because it serves the plot, even if it's just I'm putting my own spin on it. That's good enough
Mhm.
reason, but not just to check a box.
Right,
And
right.
I
Yeah,
like it when
I
they
wanted to
give you
more Ayn Rand. I'd go sit and read Ayn Rand.
right, and I like I don't have a problem with the concept of the strong female protagonist or antagonist. Just make it believable. I want to say I'll give you an example of someone who does that right. Katie Cross writes a lot of young
Mhm,
female heroines, but she always takes into the fact that the average female is smaller than the average guy, and so if you're going to do a fighter, like she's going to fight differently to fight that guy who's bigger than her, and she doesn't give you the
mhm,
12-year-old who's just magically kicking the butt of 30-year-old warriors who spent their
mhm,
entire adult life training to kill people, and suddenly she just for reasons can kill. No, when Katie writes it, it has costs to make that win, and they adjust strategy accordingly. I think that's how you do it. Like with anything, you got to make it make sense to reality, not just wishful thinking. And I like
yeah.
it. So I don't mind changes as long as it takes into account sort of reality as you envision it in your universe. Like that's the great thing about sci-fi. Power armor is the great equalizer.
Right. I think that is such a key thing too, because one, make it make sense. It's almost like 80% of our, you could get crazy with 20% if you can keep me grounded with 80%, right? So uh going back to what you're saying, like there's the reality in the way that males and females are built and constructed. So um yeah, and anyone who's spent any amount of time in combat or hand to hand training knows, like, you're not just like what it means to take a punch to the face, what it, like the disorientation, or like what it means to have a 6'5" man with like double the arm reach as you, clock you upside the head. You're not going to just like go all Scarlett Johansson on him and like climb up and knock him out. Like it's going to be like a fly. You know what I mean? Like, so I could really appreciate what Katie does there, and some of those characters. And to your point, if within sci-fi, create your world, construct your rules, and abide by those rules. At least I have a sense of where we're going and how things work. So that way, instead of my mind being distracted by trying to figure it all out. I'm just enjoying the ride, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
about those next cool plot points and
I
all of
have
that. So, mhm.
I have I approach it so because I was infantry, but I was deployed at squad level, attached to a transportation unit, escorting their convoys because we were trained with all the heavy weapons and stuff. My squad leader that I worked with, well, the squad leader, she wasn't my direct squad leader because I was in the gun truck squad, but the one I worked with as far as convoy commander, her and I worked hand in hand together because she was the convoy commander and I was the security commander. So in theory, when combat started, I could relieve her and take over. From a career perspective, I have to live with her when that was over. So unless she's really messing up,
Mm,
you just don't do that. But like we
mhm.
spent a lot of time talking, and she's the one who got me into running long distances for like just to clear your head. She was a cross
Mm,
country runner in college, and when we were talking just in combat because we were doing some of the pre-deployment training, she always told me, she's like, JR, I have to be smarter than my opponent because I can't be stronger than them. Speaking of the average guy, she's like, on a bronze only, I lose. When it comes to brain, I can outthink them and I can do it quicker than them, and that's how I win. And that kind of approach, like understanding realities of biology. Now, again, you add
yeah.
aliens, you add nanites, you add any kind of magic or meta or scientific mystery, you can equalize it. I'm not saying you can't, but just
Yeah.
you got to make it
Right.
believable. And so I
Right.
use her as my litmus test when it comes to strong female characters because I've never met a woman that was more badass than her. So
That's awesome. I
that's how I
wrestled in
sort of
high
do it.
school. I
Yeah,
wrestled in high school, and we were in the same weight class, but I was constructed quite differently from the same freshman, sophomore, or eighth grade of the same weight class. So, like
yeah,
you said, like I couldn't. It wasn't the same. Like it wasn't the same. And people are like, all things equal. It's like, man, I'm gonna bend and I'm gonna move and I'm constructed in very different ways than that guy is. Both of us training, right? Both of us doing all that. I'm not saying like I just stepped
and
in with no
presumably you were
training and
both
was
in
like,
good
well, I
shape.
gotta. Right, right. And we're both adolescent and all that, but like the body is different. The density, the muscles, the way things are and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. It's an awesome thing because how we could all complement each other. But there are those
Yes.
realities, and so um yeah, like yeah, exactly what you're saying there. That's
So
one of the awesome things about sci-fi is because you can equalize with these really creative ways.
all things being equal, wrestling in high school taught me that sometimes it doesn't matter who's better. Like I started wrestling in high school. Most people started in middle school. So I was already
Mm,
behind the eight ball. And I remember the coach
mhm.
always told me I didn't have to learn all the 100,000 moves everyone else could do. I only had to learn 2 or 3 for each position and then do them perfectly. Because at that point, it's just a matter of can you take a punch while you wait for, well, not punch, it's wrestling, but can you
Right.
take the pain while you wait for the other guy to mess up? Because you only have to get it right once if you do it perfectly.
Yeah.
And so that was my claim to fame. Not that I was better wrestler from a purely like skills perspective. Most of them were better than me, but I just held on longer and was willing to suck it up longer because I was more stubborn than them in the end. I actually wrestled heavyweight in high school. I ended up losing a bunch of weight my senior year to get ready for the military. But I
Wow.
ended up breaking the state record for the longest wrestling match in state history at the time. Now, this was
Wow.
98. I don't know if it still holds. And the website that used to track that stuff is no longer, it's not up anymore. So I don't know if they even track that. But we went into quadruple overtime in wrestling at the regionals, and I lost not because the guy was a better wrestler than me, because at that point you've kind of proven you're pretty equal. He just wanted it more in the end, and then that fourth quarter, that motivation, and that even though I lost, I figure if you're going to be on the losing end of a record, I'd rather it be the longest match than the shortest one, because that kid was also on my
Mhm.
team wrestling the flyweight. He got pinned in half a second.
Oh.
Oh, poor kid. Yeah, but it was by a girl too, so
Oh.
he had to live that one down twice.
Oh,
But
wow. Yeah.
yeah, but so
That's
it's one of those things where
exhausting.
you just
That is
it is, but it's one of those things where you realize when you do that hand to hand stuff for real, how much just grit and dedication can carry you. Like you still have to have skills. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't care how dedicated you are. If you're going up against Arnold Schwarzenegger in a bench contest when he's at his prime, like he's still kicking your butt, right? Like
right.
skills matter at a certain point. But anyway,
Yes, they
all
do.
right. So this is the fun part of the conversations is we go we go afield a lot from where we intended. But I have to ask the last religion question, and then we're going to talk about this Kickstarter. But because we're polytheistic, and these were picked especially for you, Jennifer, Lord of
Okay.
the Rings,
Oh.
Chronicles of Narnia, or his Dark Material series, which is Golden Compass is a part of that series, if you're more familiar with that one.
I am. I am gonna go with. No, I guess Lord of the Rings. Don't get me wrong. I love Narnia. I love C.S. Lewis. I just think, um, yeah, I'm gonna
I
go with
picked
Lord of
them
the Rings.
because I picked them because they were all examples of people, like they were very religious. They wrote intending to teach the underlying premises of their faith. I think they were all, in fact, they were all Christian. I think I think Tolkien was Catholic and the other ones were Protestant. I think I could be wrong. It's been a while since I studied them in my English lit class, but they all approached teaching you about their morals by not slamming it in your face. They went in the back door with the fantasy kind of adventure story. And I thought
Yeah,
when I was interviewing you, I figured that was the perfect setup for you,
those
just
are good.
because that's kind of what you and Jonathan try to do, right? Like teach good messages. All right,
And
so
it's not so like didactic in that way. It's like the good messages. It goes back to what you're saying. Like it comes from intuition. Like this is what I know, so this is what I write. Uh, so that like in case anyone's like, well, these are what are these like Christian speculative fiction? Like, no, it's just it's only there if you're really looking for it in that way. But yeah, it's what they knew. Um, a side note on Tolkien though is that this past year I was doing a bunch of studies for my daughter's schooling on a composer from Finland. And one of the things his claim to fame was like it was right around the time when Finland was starting to get its national identity from
okay,
Russia and from Sweden. And so one of the things that some of their scholars did was go back through like the villages and the outlying lands and get a collection of their original tales, which is to us might be like fairy tales, but the lore, the national lore, because when Christianity was introduced to that land, a lot of that lore was suppressed. And so, it did inform their sort of like what you might call their natural religion or paganism or folklore, however you want to call it. But a lot of that is actually where Tolkien got some of his characters for the Silmarillion. So name for name on a couple of them, or like mirroring part of like one of the heroes' journey. And so as I was researching, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is really cool!" And looking into it and reading, there's a quote from his daughter who called out like the music from the composer and a couple of his they're called. I'm trying to remember the name. Anyway, it's a sound poem. So it's not just like a symphony for music, but like it's actually using the music to tell a story. And it was part of Tolkien's favorite songs. And so I was like, or pieces. And I was like, that is so cool. Like I did not expect to find that. And so I think that's for me another the reasons that Tolkien won out this time because it's like really fresh. Really fresh for me.
no, I get that. And what you're talking about is it's not quite oral history, but they're recording the oral tales of the
Mm-hmm.
local legends and stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
have participated with the Library of Congress's oral history project. Basically, the idea is to record those stories before the people that know them pass on. Now, oral
Yes.
history specifically is the tales of people that actually served. I actually sent the links to Jonathan to get him see if he could get his dad to tell his stories about when he was in Vietnam. That's sometimes a hard
Wow.
ask. It's been a
Yeah.
couple years, so I don't know if his. But I mean, it's hard to talk about some of those. But that's the kind of stuff where they record that. There's a different name for it when you're recording like myths and legend and lore, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
definitely the oral traditions. There we go. You're starting to record
Yeah.
the oral traditions because at a certain point in time, the people that know all those tales go away, and then what happens if they don't? And that's why it's important to pass that kind of stuff off to the kids too.
Mm-hmm.
But all right. So because we are at the wow, it's been 49 minutes.
Time
We're
flies
gonna
when you're
put up
having so much fun.
we're gonna put up the Forsaken Mercenary. So what would your elevator since you're sponsoring this episode, what would your elevator pitch for the Forsaken Mercenaries be?
Yeah, he's the deadliest man in the galaxy, if he could only remember, and some of his dark past could be his undoing, but there's still a chance
Okay,
for redemption. Hmm.
that is definitely intriguing. All right, so we brought you here to. So first off, that art that we've got on the screen that came from the Kickstarter, which is what brought you here. What is the story behind that art? Like, is that the main character? Is that like a side character? Is it just stock art?
Um, do you mean the main character, like a photo of the actor, or do you mean like is it
No, no,
intended
no.
to
On the
be like
screen, the art that you
yeah?
gave us, which
Hmm.
is on the Kickstarter page when you go and look at it. Like,
Uh-huh.
is that the main character, or is that just an artist rendering of the armor? Like, what's the story behind this art we're looking at?
AI. It's
Oh, okay.
supposed
So
to be
it's
the Yeah, it's supposed to be the main character, Daniel Hunt. And like it's on a future, it's a near future, so like maybe 80 years into the future, so on the moon in a moon colony. And so it's got a little bit of that cyberpunk element and those high rise like stacked because we're not going wide, we're going tall and deep in our construct. And for saving space and everything. And so yeah, there are some descriptions in the book of who the character is or kind of what he reminisces. And as every author might do, especially when he's very visual like Jonathan, he sees the story in his mind as he writes. I know more about like who he saw, so like a young Clint Eastwood, a young man with no name, if you would. So that's kind of, we use Scott as the inspiration, and I had probably too much fun with AI art to kind of get something rendered, because we had a hand drawn some line art, but I wanted to make sure that the viewers understood like it wasn't going to be an animated series we're developing, but rather a live action. So that's how we came up with this here.
So that is the pitch for the series writ large, and we will link to Jonathan's website where he links all the different books in the Forsaken Mercenary series, so you can read
Hmm.
about the world where this story taking place. Now, the Forsaken Mercenary Kickstarter, the sci-fi thriller short film, is that going to be in the universe or actually trying to tell the tale of the books?
Okay, so the short right now is looking to be about 15 to 20 minutes, because it's a dual purpose. One, it's a short film by name, so it has to like be short. But it also could be a proof of concept, so we could take it to studios or other actors and additional investors down the line and say like maybe we want to do a feature. Do you This could be the next Expanse. Maybe it's episodic. So that's the purpose that it serves. And if anyone's wondering like more about that, how that all works, it's bananas, and I'd be more than happy to share though. And so we want to get into genre specific film festivals. And I don't know if people know this, but John Wick, when it was first made, was an independent film. No major studio wanted to pick it up. Keanu Reeves was not hot at that time. He'd come off two flops, or like box office flops, if you would. I think everyone listening to this probably enjoyed those films. And was a first time director. He'd only been a second unit director, and he was coming on to do this. And the guy's background was in stunt coordination. And oh man, he is so good. And the idea, and I think it was based off of a book or a story, but it had a completely different name. And it was, the character was much older, John Wick in there. And they're like, he's going to kill 86 people because of a dog, but his wife dies of natural causes. Like, they couldn't get their minds wrapped around it until they saw it at a film festival. And then that's when Lionsgate was like, mine. So we plan on going to some of those same film festivals as John Wick did originally. And so this is going to be following true to story, because it's a Kickstarter campaign, and it is the readers and fringe fans of supporters that are contributing to this to bring this to life. We wanted to stick true to the characters in the story that they've loved these past years. So we're not changing who Daniel as person is. We're telling his sort of origin story, how the very opening of the film, and it's a complete arc, but as every good storyteller does, having some open loops so that way it can continue into the future and makes you wonder for more. But it's a story
But it,
of redemption. Hmm.
but is it telling? So the Forsaken Mercenary series has several books in
Hmm.
it. I think 9, if I remember correctly.
12.
No, 12. Okay, I knew there was a lot. It's hard to keep track after a while.
Yeah, I
But so he's got,
understand.
and it's got a larger arc. So is this going to follow the books, or is it going to be like before the books started? Is it going to branch out and be its own thing? So, for instance, the 100 book is largely different than the 100 TV series. The books are good. I read them. The show was good.
Oh,
It was definitely, but the properties,
no,
there were
this
changes.
is it's the same. It's like the
Okay.
first arc of the first book. So within the book, it's like that first main arc of like I don't know, the first 4 chapters or something like that. And there's like a book 0. So we're kind of encapsulating all of that in this film. But it's definitely it'd be like before you get to that like major scene change in the book where all of a sudden he goes to Earth and he's on this new part of his adventure. This is all taking place on the moon. The first part of the book.
Okay. So first, it's a Kickstarter. So if you back the Kickstarter, dear listener, and it gets to the whatever the what is your benchmark for you guys? Because we're recording this before it's live, so I can't look.
Oh yeah,
So
no
what is your
problem.
goal?
Thank you for forget people can't see. So our goal to start is $20,000. We want to get that within the first week, and then anything from there, we are offering additional stretch goals that would just allow us to do like more of the CGI, go after bigger name actors. So like depending on the budget of your film, because we will be another SAG. This will be another SAG film. We could do that. We have. Filled out all the necessary paperwork with our last film, and so we're going to do that this time because we want to make sure we're true to the performers and giving higher caliber performers the opportunity to do it if they are union, but we also get to compensate them in another way with their not only residuals but it's pension, so things like that. It's like a
So
friendlier thing to
for
do. So
so
the more money
I
we come up with, the higher like tier actor performer we can get to this.
all right. So for those of us who aren't in union states, SAG
Oh,
is the
thank
Screen
you.
Actors Guild. What do you mean, like the union requirement? Is it sort of like SIFWA? It has to be a qualifying film for them to be able to do it, or I don't know how all that works for the Hollywood section because theirs is a unique
Yeah.
industry unto
Thank you
itself.
for bringing that up because we're in California, so like everything has got all these different things to jump through.
I mean,
Yeah,
even
so if
Starbucks there
your
have unions.
yeah, it's crazy. I don't think those restaurant servers do have unions though, but I think they do on the East Coast. That was a thing. So the requirements. So like if you think about studios in the early days and they owned the actors and they could tell them what they could do and what they couldn't do, all of that kind of stuff. Like they forced some actresses to have abortions because it didn't fit with their image and all of that stuff. They didn't have protection because they were, at the leisure, at the hand of these studios. So they had and like crazy hour days, not necessarily safe environments. So that's why they unionized. And so by having union now, it just protects them. Like if we want to participate, we have to follow those rules that are set by the union. And the benefits to us is that people with more experience, they are going to be union and they will be more inclined to work with us knowing, hey, we're independent, but we're still going to treat you right. Like we're still going to keep you safe. We're still going to abide, like especially with COVID. When the last film we filmed was in 2001, early 2001 maybe. So we had to like SAG has COVID rules, which I think were just lifted for 2023. But they, as a performer, if you're going to go out and be on the set, you want to know, are these people beholden to a certain safety standard, to a certain production condition? And so that's one of the benefits of SAG. Another benefit of SAG, mutual benefit for us. So yeah, we're hoping
Yeah,
to get some good names, recognizable names from the genres in here, some like Star Trek people or some action people. Yeah, so that's where we're doing right now.
and
Our
if you
last film won a few film festival awards. And then our cinematographer and co-director, he's also award-winning. His films have appeared on Dust. He has a Civil War era film coming out soon. It's already been pre-approved and pre-accepted into several film festivals. So the professional quality is always something that surprises people, because you hear indie film, you think indie backyard student film, and those are very different. Like, we are renting cameras from the same places in Hollywood and Burbank, just up the freeway, and in filming in some of the same locations as like you would see even on Super Bowl commercials and films and like coming out of studios.
And I think this is being recorded in July of 2023. So if you're listening to it years later, this is also the year where all of the Rust indie film stuff happened, where they accidentally shot because of poor prop management. One of the film directors, there's a lot of controversy behind it. We don't need to rehash that. That's not our bag. But I will say they're definitely looking, all of the oversight boards, to include health inspectors and all of that, are definitely looking a lot more closely at indie films now than they used to as well. So I think it's important that you guys are taking those safety precautions. I mean, obviously it's different when you're not using real guns like you would in a Western, because your blasters aren't actually shooting, plaza raid, whatever, insert science fiction tropes. But the idea that you want to be safe for everyone involved, I think, is important. Especially since most of these companies that make film are fly by night, in that they exist for the movie and then they close and then they reopen for a new company for another movie, which means if you do get hurt, who do you sue? Because the company doesn't exist anymore. And so it becomes more important.
An interesting thing that we've come across is like, okay, learning the film, right? As indie publishers, you learn one way, and then the more money involved, the more risk. And so that's one of the things with this kind of like, say, like not a feature film that we could sell to a studio or distributor, right? The contracts have to be super clean, and everything is not built by our production company, but a new LLC owns the IP and everything that goes with it. They're the manager of all the funds and the budget, and they're the signatory on all the contracts. And so so when somebody buys it, like a distributor's like, I want to buy this, or some studios like, we're going to own this, they're buying that entire business and everything that comes with it. And that could be, if there are issues, they don't want that liability. MGM's still around, whoever, like the big studio, Paramount doesn't want that liability, Universal doesn't want that liability, Disney doesn't want that. So they have to think about all of that. And to your point, JR, if nobody buys it and it's dissolved, then there's nobody further like beholden for that responsibility to hopefully nobody gets hurt or whatever it is. That's one of the things about having an existing IP. That's another mitigated liability, because then people aren't, you can't say like, oh, that was my idea. It's like, there are 12 books. They have sold over 200,000 copies across 12 countries in multiple languages. It's an audio. It has, like 20,000 or 15,000 5-star reviews. There is no question who owns this intellectual property, who came up with all of these stories. So that's another thing, like the fan base, the reader base, the support base has been huge on this. And again, like going back as we're preparing everything for the film and seeing what everyone has said about reading the stories, I am so excited to put this out there. It's the stuff that we love, like a real gritty, kind of a jerk of a hero, but he's got those redeeming qualities, kind of like a Wolverine, right? Like
but he's not an anti-hero. Where they turn the hero on his tropes and they make him someone you hate. Like, I hate it when I'm reading, and I've read some grimdark that was like this, and there are other genres that do it too. But like, when you hate the good guys as much as the bad guys, like, that's kind of hard.
Black and white. He's black and white.
Yeah,
he's a reluctant hero. This would be he doesn't want to be the hero, which makes him a better hero. I think. But yeah, and we've got a nice array of characters. I was doing research on like, what would it be like to be on the moon? And so I was reading this NASA document article, as people do at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And
other people don't do that?
I thought everybody does. And they were saying like it would take us, I think it was like 20 years from now, we will have the technology to send to the moon to begin digging and building a domed city. And it would take those robots about 15 years until people could live there. So, like doing the calculations and all of that, it's like the near future, and you're just like, I don't want to be part of that first iteration. Like maybe I'll be part of the second or fifth domed city. Um, and so that kind of like influenced me and how I was thinking about like what would this look like when we're talking about like from an art direction. Like it's very utilitarian. There's not much extra uh, uh, artistic intricate details in this world, because if it's not serving a purpose, then they're not bringing it in just for fun to this off planet. So yeah, that'll be really cool to see come to life, and that we can do that service. It kind of reminds me of like BB Larson's World series. You know how they're like constructing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they have that spray. It's like a cement spray, and you can wait for it to
I know what you're
harden,
talking
and
about.
then
Everyone really quickcrete, plasticrete, like you put the word crete, CRETE at the end of a word, and the
Mhm.
understanding is it's some new agey, spacey, concrete,
Concrete mixture thing. Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
instantly hardens in space. Like I and it's got versatility. I mean, if you think about it, they've got AI controlled 3D printers printing with cement, building homes, like structures that
Mhm.
people could in theory live. Obviously, if it's cement only, you're going to want to insulate it and stuff. But they're already
Right.
testing the kind of technology that is controlled remotely that we would need to live on Mars. Like they're already starting. Um,
Yeah.
so that the technology, I actually wrote a book that's pulled because I'm going to turn it into a series. It was a standalone where my premise in the world building that never showed in book one of the race to space in the FTL didn't start with NASA, and it didn't start with the military. It started with them putting a colony up there so they could have the real housewives of Mars or housewives of the moon or whatever, um, of Lunar City, like the idea, because that's where you're going to get people to care, right? That was, of course, when I was outlining
Yeah.
that, The Real Housewives of Atlanta was really the big hit show, right? But like
Dude, that's
the
been on for
idea
like
that,
13 seasons or something like that. I just
yeah,
saw
different
that
people, I
the other
think, I don't know, I
day.
don't follow it, but you see
I
it
don't
on
think they
the
listen to this
snippets.
podcast.
No, probably not. Um, so they're never gonna get their feelings hurt. But yeah, so like I get the idea that we're gonna go to the moon. I think it's inevitable. I don't understand why we don't go there first instead of trying to go straight to Mars. Because in theory, if something goes wrong, you could get help there quick enough that people have a chance of living, right? And
Yeah.
supplies don't take as
Yeah.
long. But yeah, I definitely I can see that. I will say we're going to circle back real quick where you mentioned Dust. Dust Studios is a YouTube channel. I share their content all the time. If you're in Scott Bartlett's group, I share it in the Sci-Fi Blasters and Blades podcast. I always dock another
Mhm.
drink. I keep forgetting the new name. It's only been 3 years, right? Give me another decade, I'll finally get it right. Sci-Fi Shenanigans just rolls off the tongue so well, though. I'm pretty proud of that marketing. We wanted to branch out for more than just sci-fi. But so like Dust put some really good indie films that in some ways are cleaner stories, and they're better told and they're better produced than some of what Hollywood is doing. And it's just people that are passionate about it. And I'm like, I couldn't tell you how many times I'm like, no, I'm not done with the story yet. Come back. I want more.
Right? They're shorts,
So
yeah, and but they do such a good job. Like because they're fans of the genre. They have that intuitive sense of what should be like. We're gonna have an AI in here, an AI like a augmented, but for like your heads up display, kind of like Cortana or Jarvis
yeah,
or Friday or what have you. And so at one point there was discussion of like, should we cut that? And we are like, no. Um, People love that trope. I love that trope. Like it's very natural expectation of what to encounter in this world. And so that's what the people who are up putting content or having content available on Dust. They know the tropes in the genre because they're fans of it. It's the stuff that they love. And it's not about what some executive producers want from Hollywood because this is like I don't understand this and how is this going to sail and I don't have any data to support that. Like I get it. That's what they're doing with their business. But as a filmmaker, and it's like we're trying to do it to get in here, is like we just want some good, fun content. It's not agenda driven for good or bad or otherwise for left or right or middle or up or down. It's just like let's get a good, fun story in here that's exciting that you can watch. You could potentially watch with your whole family. We've had people reach out and say like, oh, my teenage son, like my son's reading this for the second time through. It's like you get a kid, a boy, a teenage boy to read this. Like one, it's clean enough for him to read, but two, like boys, like it's a hard thing to get kids to read. That's a huge thing in schools. And so having someone read for fun, that it's not a school assignment, there's no report on it, you have to write a paper, like that's what we are excited to put out there.
So, what are some of the stretch goals that you guys have? You said your goal is 20,000 for this Kickstarter. That's going to fund the production and everything that goes behind it for this short film. You said it's a thriller, so presumably it's going to be like high intensity action and intrigue, because thriller generally denotes a lot of action.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of thriller is more than mill sci-fi. The action is also as much in your head as it is on the screen or on the page. Like with the military side, with sci-fi and the mill sci-fi, like it's the action is the combat. When you talk about thrillers, a lot of times it's the action can be the fist fights and the intrigue of the spies, like all of that, where it's as much a mental thing as it is as just, shooting it out with guns at high noon. So with this one, like assuming it's going to be high action, would the stretch goals be like, I don't know, extra stunts, or like what are you looking to do for the
Yeah.
stretch goals?
So the goals, currently the stretch goals go all the way up to like 85,000. So I know that's like a huge jump between 20,000 and 85,000. But if we get up to like 85, 100,000, that's going to allow us to like bring in additional and more experienced or seasoned stunt coordinators. Like we're going to have a stunt coordinator and his team. We're going to have what's called pre-production time, where the performers or the actors are going to be going through and rehearsing those stunts, and we're going to be getting like making sure we're planning ahead for the angles. Like that was one thing that's huge to us. Like Jonathan and I are such weirdos. We love action scenes, and we'll send each other YouTube video clips of like our favorite action scenes. And like I really loved some of the stuff in the latest I think it's Amazon Prime Reacher series, featuring Alan Richardson. I'm a real big. I didn't realize this until this past year. Like I really love thrillers, and so watching some of those moves again, John Wick, Jason Bourne. Like there's so many different kinds of combat, hand to hand and otherwise. The Daredevil series on Netflix had some really wonderfully exciting, interesting shot things. Like it was innovative in many ways. You think the hallway fight scenes, some like what is a thriller without a really good warehouse scene? So incorporating that in there, it's going to allow us to do it. We're going to do it well, but to do it at a different professional level, to be able to say this stunt coordinator also worked on Everything Everywhere All at Once. This guy, like we instead of just making it like a 3-move scene, like, okay, we can really flesh this out. And I think just give the people what they want and more of it, and elevating it all the more and more. And every dollar, as we did with the last one, like putting in those big cinematic features and trying to put as much of every dollar on screen as possible. And so what we really wanted to do with the rewards is give that to the people. Like we're going to have some credits and like going to have future credits. So like what if people can have that as a reward and they can get some movie props? What if they have her name's X, the AI, what if they get a custom recording with their name like addressed to them to have from the show's AI voiceover talent, or a copy of the script? Like one thing that I think people really enjoy, like I don't know about everyone, but like the behind the scenes, the making of like how did this happen? Like what was this like? And so to put together a book that has behind the scenes photos, some of the casting photos, some of the costuming worksheets, along with the script and some early script notes, and be able to have that as like a bound thing signed by the writer, director, or any star names that we get to have on, like to have that as a memento. I think that would be really cool.
Who wrote the script?
Jonathan.
Did he have to go to any classes? Because writing a script and writing a book are two different skill sets. How did
That's
that
true.
happen?
It's Jonathan. Caffeine, reading so many scripts. I can't even tell you how many scripts he has read. So he's read, the Stranger Things scripts. He's read. There's a lot of the scripts of the movies or the shows that he has enjoyed. He has, or that are classics. Read those, and then lots of interviews. He's watched to kind of understand, like, what is the feedback? What is the director looking for? Like, what informs a performer when they're reading this? Like, what are those nuances? And then he has, in the past couple of years, he's actually written some scripts with some couple of notable directors. Those things, as Hollywood has it, like kind of just sitting there waiting to be further in development. But getting feedback on those pieces and being able to take that and say, okay, like, how do I improve my craft? And he'll tell you that writing a script is so much easier than writing a book, because it's like some direction and it's all dialogue, and all that prose and narrative is gone, because a lot of it could be interpreted by the director and the performers to
I
bring it
don't
to
think I've
fruition.
ever seen a script for a movie or anything. I know just intuitively that a movie script's going to look much like a play script, and most of
Mhm.
us read plays written by Shakespeare in high school, so there's going to be some. It's going to look some similar, but I imagine like there's going to be some differences too, from
Mhm.
what we would have read in high school to what Jonathan's putting together. So you mentioned that Jonathan wrote the script. Who's going to be directing it? Do you know that yet, or is that going to be Jonathan?
We do know that Jonathan does not want to be a director at all, um, which is like a funny thing, that like he is a blunt instrument. He is so good. He has so much energy and so much like passion behind what he does. But when it comes to like nitty gritty details and those nuances, like it's taxing for him. He does not enjoy it. Like he could do it. He's like, but I don't enjoy it. So it'll be co-directed by um, our cinematographer team. So he's leading our cinematographer team, but he is his name's William Helmuth, and he has done Alone, and he has a few others that he's done, and then he'll be co-directing with me. So I'll be making my directorial debut on this one.
Okay. Are you excited?
Yeah,
Nervous?
both. Yeah, I have a lot of behind the camera directing experience on still and commercial stuff from my advertising agency days, but going into fiction like this and like film, I haven't. So that's why I'm excited to team up with someone who has much more behind the camera technical experience for us to collaborate on bringing this to fruition. Yeah.
So I
Yeah, like it's like I believe in myself and I know I can do it, but I just want to make sure that the film itself is all it can be.
yeah, I get that. So I'm trying to think of how to ask. You know what? Screw it. I'm not going to worry about being politically correct.
Just do it.
Jonathan is one of the Jonathan is one of the authors these days. The trend is to write almost no description of the main characters, because the idea is, well, you
Mhm.
just let the reader fill it in. I'm the kind of reader. No, I want to know, what does he look like? What does he sound like? Like, you don't have to beat me over the head of it and tell me where every 12th mole is, but give me some idea to paint the picture. When you write like that, though, that means if you're picking actors for the book, you come up to the question: do you pick the guy who has the best talent in sort of impersonates and characterizes the essence of the character, or do you pick who looks like what you described? So, for instance, what if you described, we'll say, a white guy in this character, because that's what's on the screen, but the best actor that just sort of has that je ne sais quoi of that essence of what the character is happens to be a person of color. Do you prioritize when you're filming this, and this is a personal preference, there's no wrong answer, I don't think, do you prioritize picking the look so it's true to the story, or picking the essence of the character and care more about that, so the actor might not line up? I know there are going to be purists either way who are going to get upset no matter what we do, so I'm just asking what
Mhm.
you and Jonathan think when you think about this.
Yeah, no, the great thing is that Jonathan wants no part of the casting. He
Okay.
does not like it because he feels terrible for every no. Um, so what we are maybe doing is actually on this one hiring a casting director to a casting agent to help us find those people and give us access to folks that we wouldn't otherwise. So that's like another one of those like higher reward. If we have more money, we could do that and they'll have it in, as opposed to me emailing their manager like, hey, want to be in my film? Um, and it's a combination of the two. So it's not just how we cast Daniel, it's the chemistry of the team, of the leads together. So like, does he, whoever he is, relay to me the essence of this guy? Does he have a chip on his shoulder, but very likable? Because you want people still like, does he have the charm to bring you in? He's not smarmy or, you know, saturated with that uh, and just genuine charm. But like, you know, is there something about him that you find irresistible? Kind of like a Hugh Jackman, even when he's in a character where he's kind of a jerk. But also, like, how do the people work together? So, you know, do we have not diversity, like, do we have diversity? Are we checking boxes? But like, we're in future of humanity. So humanity on the moon is going to have all kinds of humans. So where are all of those people? And how does someone portray a character? And how does that relate to, you know, somebody else that they're on screen with? And is there enough dynamic difference amongst everybody? Because you don't want it very flat where everybody kind of has a chip on their shoulder. Like, is there somebody that, okay, this woman portrayed the bartender with warmth, but this one portrayed it with like a chip on her shoulder? Both could be great interpretations of this character. And then, you know, how does that work with everyone? So there's so much more that goes into it, that it's rarely down to something as simple as like, is he relaying this character, or is this a guy relaying this character? He's white, he's brown, like, or he's white, he's black, or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't come down to that. And I've done that enough too in casting for like I said, the commercial stuff and the print stuff that I did before, because we would have like shoots for retail, and so there'd have to be families. So you have to look at like, how do the kids relate to the parents, and how many like tall people and short, like, you know, we have to have a variety. So blondes, brunettes, whatever, black hair, like, how are all of these picture going together? Because what's going to sell that aesthetically when you're doing retail and commercial? So the same ideas kind of come into play here, but have a lot more depth because we're doing film.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what you were talking about with everyone having the chip on their shoulder. Like, that's where you run into at a certain point in time. If you get older actors, and if your character is older, you're going to have probably actors who've been around for a little bit. You get the William Shatner slash Jonathan Frakes, so that's Captain Kirk or Number One, Commander Riker on Star Trek: The Next Generation. But the reason I mention them is they became known for every actor they did after every, like, later in their life. They became characters of themselves as they used to be when they were young, like caricatures of what they were, as opposed to, you know, constantly reinventing the character. And there's a danger in that when you pick, I would imagine, just as someone who likes to watch shows when I have time, like, you want someone that's going to be the character from the story, not just themselves. And if they're going to be just themselves, then themselves better be the character that you envision.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a character here. Gosh, I just totally forgot his name. Wesley Cage, and he, in Jonathan's mind, was inspired by Captain Sam Turgill or from Rambo, the Colonel
Yeah.
in Rambo. Yeah, right. So he's kind of a mentor figure, kind of like, but at the same time, you know, he kind of has Nick Fury esque to him, and oh gosh, what was her name? She is Viola Davis's character in the DC like Suicide Squad Peacemaker world. I forget her character's name, but like, they're in charge. They know things, but they're you know, and their schemes have schemes. Their plans have backup plans. Like, but and they're seasoned, but you don't ever fully trust them just because they've been in the game for so long. And so there are people that we know of that fit that exactly, and then there are people who could portray that, and as long as they're true to the character that we're trying to convey, either one is fine to cast. are they Wesley Cage? Can they be Wesley Cage / or are they already essentially Wesley Cage? And so what we don't want is to put anyone in that takes anyone out of being immersed in the show. Again, it's 15 minutes, so I've got to get them in there solid for 15
Gotta be
minutes.
punchy.
And then, yeah, and then also be like, I want more. So yeah, and there's always there is the potential to extend it or do an extended cut version, and any of that. There's potential an investor, like a proper investor, could see this and be like, "Here's $3 million, make me a feature film." Okay, so everyone gets to have a feature film, and that's it's a lot less cut and dry than in publishing. It's not like someone's going to be like, oh, here's another $10,000 to, do your upfront costs. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to take this 80,000 word novel and turn it into a 300,000 word novel. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So the character was Colonel Samuel Richard Troutman. I looked it up. And he's played by Richard Crenna, but the Colonel Troutman was who you're talking about. So I will say, because we mentioned, the race / gender swapping, if the character vibe was right, because like I said, there's no wrong answer. I will say that when Jonathan writes, he tends to have diverse characters, because and it doesn't ever feel like, I sound like a fanboy, but it never felt like it was forced. He just writes what he knows, and California is such an epicenter of cultural, I don't know, immersion, I guess, because there's so much where you guys live. It's not like in the middle of Heartland, Kansas, where you don't see a lot that's different from you. And that's not a bad thing. I love Kansas. I'd buy a missile silo there if I had $1 million and could hire someone to fix it up. I'd have my own bunker. But I will say that because he writes so all over the place character-wise, I think there's definitely room for all of that. So it's not a representation thing. That's not why I asked it. I was curious, like, where the emphasis was it on the personality, or was it on matching the look, or somewhere in between?
Personality.
Because I think it's important for people that might not have heard of you, where that matters. In anything Jonathan writes, there's a chance you could see someone like you, either in personality or in ethnicity or whatever. And it never felt forced, because when it felt forced, I hate that. Like, no, just that feels like you're checking a box. I think with Jonathan, it's just because where you guys live, he sees so much of that just inevitably, when you draw from people in real life, you get that, right? Like, it's the same with military.
Absolutely.
Military sci-fi books tend to be that way, because veterans tend to write them, and and it's a wide swath of people serving the military. So you meet people that if you were just living in BF nowhere, like, you wouldn't have necessarily met, right? Like, I think that makes a difference.
Right. Yeah.
So I do have
and I don't know if people know this, but like, Jonathan's brown. He's Hispanic. He's Mexican. And so like look at this. The guy we have here is a Caucasian. He's a white guy, but it's just who he saw. But it was also like influence, kind of inspired by the characters he grew up with. Like I said, the man with no name, or Josie Wells. Like, that kind of person is who he saw for this book. But on another series, that character has a different background and a different kind of story, and it was somewhat inspired by his grandfather, who was a long haul truck driver. And so, but again, to your point, like, we're in Southern California, so we have all kinds of people all around us all the time. It's not an anomaly to see any type of person at the store, or the gym, or the park, or whatever next to us. And again, thinking in the mind, like, in the future, when you're talking about humanity as a whole, there's going to be a big melting pot. If not, it's a different story of what happened to that country or that region that didn't make it. But that's not this story. So
yeah. And like I said, I obviously we talked about knowing your audience. I know who my audience is as Mill Sci-Fi, but I also know that John's audience is different, because he writes, tend to be space exploration, colonization, genetic enhancements, like all the subgenres that are equally as valid. They have different audiences. So I'm asking some of my questions because I know this is going to be seen by his readers and his listeners too. So they can kind of, that's the trick when you learn when you're doing interviews. Half the time you ask questions you actually already know the answer to, but the reader or the listener might not. Ergo, you ask the question. I think I've done over 500 at this point interviews, but okay. So this is the important question that fans of all. This is episode we've got 300 episodes as Blasters and Blades, and then we are up. We had 185 saved on Sci-Fi Shenanigans, and more that we recorded that never aired. So yeah, we're close to 500.
Wow.
If we're not there already. But all right, so this is the important question. So a lot of actors, and we're looking at Mel Brooks, but are you guys planning on cameos in the film? I mean, it's probably easier to fit in a long film than it is a short film. But you or
Yeah.
John planning on,
Oh, like us?
yeah, like getting a walk on as, I don't know, extra number 4 in the back of the bar or whatever.
Jonathan wants a speaking role. Yeah, no, Jonathan would want a straight up speaking role. And if you ask him, it's because not that he wants fame or fortune. He, he wants to do things that like scare him and make him uncomfortable. And the idea of being on camera and having to perform and tap into that like other way of portraying and conveying and looking at things puts him out of his comfort zone and can grow him even as a storyteller, author, writer, what have you. And so he hopes that it will work out, that he can have a role in the film.
I get
But
that.
I'm always off camera. I am off camera.
I get that, like that idea. Like, so my biggest regret in the Army is I got hurt before I could go to airborne school. On my coming home from my second deployment, I actually had a slot. I was supposed to go to airborne school. So I was federalized reserve, meaning I spent enough time on active duty that they considered us reservists and guardsmen in my unit active duty because of the duration. So like they were going to bring me on board. The unit commander wanted me. I was going to go to airborne school, and I got hurt. And if people ask me why I would go, it's because I was afraid of heights. That's why I wanted to go to airborne school, because you got to challenge, like you got to tackle what bugs you, right? So I totally get that mentality. So is he
Yeah.
thinking he wants just to speak, or is he going to want to do some of the like special? No, not special. What do you call stunts? There
Mm-mm.
you go. Is he going to want to do stunts?
I'm gonna put a no on that for now. Like I don't think he does want to, but like Jonathan's
You're
kind of
using
his
your wifely
mentor.
prerogative and saying no.
Yeah, like I don't know, more like his manager. Like he's had not anytime recently, but like we'll just say like teenage to early 20s, several concussions. So we have rules about if we're doing this lifestyle and this business coming from his brain, we must protect said assets. And so, of course, we're going to be safe. Of course, we're always being safe. But like when he was taking boxing lessons, he was never going to spar. Like he was just learning all the moves and sweating all the sweat. So, like that's kind of like the rule with like combat or getting into those spaces is like protect the brain, protect the hands. And so like he can talk and speak and walk on set all he wants. That's it, but nothing physical.
Yeah, I joked with Jason and Nick when I was publishing The Reservist that if they ever did the movie, I wanted a walk-on role. I didn't need to take my bucket off, and I needed to be pregnant Legionnaire number 2, right? Just because so I like get away with the fat guy. They said no on that, so I guess my speaking role is over. These are not the droids you're looking for.
Right.
Okay, so I have said for years that one of the downfalls of modern Hollywood, which is where Dust gets it right, and some of the indie films gets it right, because YouTube and Rumble and BitChute are starting to be great avenues for indie films to get traction they wouldn't otherwise get. And I think one of the differences is a lot of the actors on the indie side come from the stage, right? They were high school drama kids. They might have done local stage productions, but they acted in real time in front of people. They could see the audience reaction. They learned what worked, what didn't. And in many cases, they took sort of the classical learning approach, even if it wasn't at the prestigious studios or the prestigious schools or whatever. They still had that sort of styling. Whereas modern Hollywood, are you pretty? Can you flex? Are you visibly attractive for whatever your gender is? And then it's all green screen, right? Where they just stand in front of a green screen. And I will say there is some skill in making that believable, like that the world
Yeah.
behind you is actually on fire, but it's not the same skill set. I know one of the things that makes indie films stand out is they go with the more kinetic. So when they show an explosion, like they do a small one and then they amp it up, obviously with CGI, but it's not just green screen. They're actually acting that out. What approach do you guys think you're going to take? Is that funding dependent? Do you think you want to do more green screen, or do you want to do more
No,
in person?
more practical. More
I
practical.
actually think that looks better. I like that better personally,
Yeah.
but there's no wrong answer either as
Yeah.
far as the
And then there's this
viewers.
other really interesting thing, and anyone who's watched Mandalorian series or the making of Mandalorian would know this is this new thing with these LED walls. So you go into a sound stage, and instead of having like green screens behind you, it's LED walls. So you have practical stuff staged on the ground, but the background is it's just like big TVs, right? And somebody has to
So it's a
program and
merging of the
pre-plan
two.
all of that. And so that's one way to do it. And a lot of new stages that are being built around the country, they're looking to build these LED wall stages. And that was one thing that had been proposed to us. I think it was the film commissioner of Dallas or something like that. And so we know that may be something we can do down the line, and that will give us benefits to shooting in Dallas, because different areas outside of the Hollywood film zone offers it's called soft money benefits. What is the film? Like write-offs and all kinds of other things. So yeah, for us, practical, like, because it's 15 minutes, so it's not like we're spanning the moon. Like, we're going to be in some tight locations, and so we'll be able to get that. So the cover here, like, we're probably not going to see him at this up angle where you see the whole city in such a way, but we can get that if we did like some still photography for the promotions and the posters and all that kind of stuff. But like, he's in a bar, he's in his apartment, he is going to get ready to go on a drop ship to leave the moon, and things like that. But there's just so many creative ways to be able to execute and communicate that still on screen without having to go to full green screen. Like, there might be a green screen element, but that's not going to be like a full green screen background and all the CGI. I forget what the dot things are. The Smeagol Gollum dot things. Is that Andy
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Serkis?
about. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so you're going to go more practical effects. So
Mhm.
Jonathan is pretty good at mixing like in humorous situations. So he doesn't write what I would consider comedy, because that actually, from a marketing angle,
Mhm.
that's hard to sell. But you put comedic elements in stories, and it makes it, a lot of people like that specifically.
Mhm.
That is his writing style too. So how much of this short? I'm assuming the script for this has already been written, correct?
It's been written and rewritten. He's on his fifth draft right now.
So how much of this is a serious thriller? How much of it's going to have his trademark humor in it? Like, where do you see that all playing out if you've read it?
Yeah, the same thing. It's all emotional beats. So that humor allows us to release certain tensions and to like let go of that breath. Like, we didn't know we were holding, and releases different chemicals within us. That is my right brain way of looking at it. But Jonathan's left brain way of looking at it is like he wants to have that peppered in natural. The character is sarcastic. He says those things, and you get into situations, and like what he says is going to be that. So it may not be a full laugh out loud riotous moment, but there'll be like a chuckle in here throughout, peppered in there naturally as it fits within those characters who, like, there's some that are just deadpan, so they're not going to have any of that.
So have you thought out all of your stretch? I know we're getting close on time because I try to do wherever we cut the commercial, I try to make the other half where we talk about the project as long as the lead up. So we're already
Okay.
there. So we're good. So at this point, if you've got
Okay.
to go, I understand.
Yeah, do you
But
see how dark it's
what
gotten in here? It was daytime when we
I mean, it's
started.
yeah, well, it's 11 o'clock here because I'm hours ahead of you, but I'm
Oh,
okay. I'm
okay.
having fun. So
Okay.
what kind of stretch goals that are more like, obviously there's some about what you'll be able to do for the project to better this, a better light, a better LED wall, whatever. But obviously
Yeah.
some of those perks are going to be more geared towards, I don't want to call them vanity projects, but more geared towards the person supporting it. So like I could see in a
Every
film,
goal
I don't
is
know.
every
Yeah.
goal is oriented to what someone gets. So even if we get to the $85,000, yes, that means we get to have a casting director who's going to get us Martin Cove. What's his name? Sensei Kreese, who's super nice, by the way. We've met him. Sensei Kreese to play Wesley Cage, at $85,000. Sure, that's for us in the film, but for the contributors, like they still get something. And so that could be like just people want the 13th book written in this series, because everybody always gets like, is there going to be more of this series? Okay, so like, hey, if you guys love it that much, you get book 13. Again, the script with all the behind the scenes photos and notes and all of that stuff is going to be in there. Props from the show, like there's blasters, there's going to be armor, helmets, coins, the stuff that makes it, like, if not, guys, it's all going to be in my garage. I might as well go ahead and give it back to you guys. Like, I have no use for it. I want you to have it. We have special t-shirts, there's screenings. Like I said, we're going to be applying to film festivals. We got into 4 or 5 for the last one. This one will get into many more all over the country and France. Maybe we can get into Cannes. So we'll invite people. We get people, like, we get extra tickets, so that way that could be one of the things. If somebody, people want to do that, or we'll have a big screening event. It would be one of those stretch goal rewards, a commemorative coin, signed merchandise. Oh gosh, we pulled readers, we pulled different Kickstarter groups and Kickstarter like junkies to find, like, what is it that you love? What did Vox Machina do that everybody loved and thought was cool? And those are all the things that we are offering, because it's like a 2 or 3-fold thing. One, you're getting to be part of something bigger, and you're going to be part of a community that loves the same things that you love. You get all the behind the scenes information, weekly, like video or email updates. You're going to get the film, because we cannot put it public until after it has gone through all of its screen festival run. And then if somebody decides to pick it up, they may say, like, we want to buy this, so we can never put it out there to the general public. But people who contribute to the Kickstarter will be able to actually see it through a private link. And then there's also like all the other rewards at every tier. What did I say? T-shirt, you could be associate producer, you can get your name in IMDb. You could pay to be on set. You could pay to come and be an extra. You could have a speaking role, like, within reason, right? So we have all of that kind of mapped out within the script, or like an off-camera voice or things like that. And so we want to give the people what they want. Like, what do you guys want? That is what we've looked into, making sure that everybody gets at every step of the way.
I know I backed one that was.
Sorry, is that I had somebody ask me, and it like totally like didn't even dawn on me. They're like, well, like, do you have, like, what does your investment start at? It must be so much to do a film. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Our rewards start at $5. So you can be part of this with just $5. You can be on it and get your IMDb and on-screen credit for $1,500. Like, you can come VIP all the way, red carpet, get photos with the cast and crew for like $5,000. I don't know if that's what it is, but all of it adds up. So and what's nice is, like, there's a lot of people who want to get into film and, like, don't know how yet, or how do I begin to do this? What is it going to take for me to build my my cachet, my body of work, so I can show that I can be a filmmaker? Like, this partnering and collaborating at this level is something that will help you to do that.
I backed one, and it didn't end up. The weird thing about Kickstarter is if you don't get enough, it doesn't happen. Right. There are others like GoFundMe and Gifts and Go and a few others where even if they don't meet the minimum, like, they still give it. But that's less project specific and more cost specific, right? Like, oh, I want to fund a extension of this library, whatever. Whereas Kickstarter is generally speaking specifically for a specific project. I saw one that I backed and it didn't end up coming to fruition just because it didn't get enough. It was a World War II movie, but it was like one value got you an actor, because they were doing the same thing. They wanted to shop it to the festivals. And so, like, a certain value got you an actual physical DVD copy where the insert was signed, because, the links only last for so long, but a DVD's forever.
Yes.
I think one level got you a 5-minute phone call from the main character as the main character, not as the actor playing the main character. So you weren't talking to John Wayne, you were talking to the Green Beret he played, kind of thing. But like a set timed call, or what you talked about, like, they'll record your voice answering machine message, or, like, you could get creative with some of those perks, I think, that don't actually take a huge investment, but would mean the world to the person paying for it.
Right. I think we take for we can take for granted the world we live in, kind of like what our reality is, and that that it seems so commonplace to us, or it can seem so commonplace to us, but for someone else in a very different situation, they're like, I wish I could be part of filmmaking, but I don't have that creative side of me, but I want to be part. Like, I wouldn't even know where to get started. Like, this is a way you could be part of it. I don't even like, Netflix has the movies that made us behind the series, and then they went on to do 2 additional seasons. So clearly, it's something people wanted to know about, and so we're saying, like, we're going to do this no matter what, one way or the other. This is your chance to be a part of it. Like, we're inviting you for this exciting journey with us, and that's why we set it at 20,000, because that seems pretty attainable. We did do a Kickstarter for our last film, actually 2 films ago, and that one did almost $60,000. And so I think that we'll do great on this one. And so if anyone's like, well, to your point, JR, like, what if it doesn't get made? And now I'm excited and I've given you my best $5. It's like, no, we're one way or another. Like, we're gonna do this. I'll just get jumped in some more caffeine.
So the one that I backed in the World War II one was I paid for. They had some scenes where it was like in the office, and the main character was a soldier, and it's like him at various military type stuff, and you would give them a picture of you at the age where you would have been a soldier, and they would have digitally changed it so you were fit in the picture in the background as you, the backer was in, like, basically became a part of the prop, which I thought was kind of
That's
cool.
really cool. Yeah.
And you could pay for your name tag. So I would have, if it had gotten made, Soldier One would be, Private Handley, right? Like, it would have been. I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of cool. I don't know
That
if
is
that
very
works as
cool.
well. Name tapes don't work as well in modern sci-fi most of the time, but like the personal stuff is, I think, what people like more than a challenge coin, which they might throw in a cabinet and forget about. But like the prop that was in the movie, or a character, with their name tag on it as random soldier, like that kind of stuff, I think people dig.
Yeah, we have some
So
guys that, like, they're called grunts, but like they deserve that name in any particular scene. And they're gonna have to have names on them. So, like, we can make up a name, or we could use your name. Like, what do you guys want? So to be able to see that, or in our last film, there was like a lab, and like it was kind of like Minority Report-esque, where like it's holographic, and so on that, like, you saw stats and information about different people, and we could insert someone's name there. Pause the screen and, like, oh, there I am for 2.5, frames. So
but
yeah,
for some people, that'd be like the highlight of their life. That'd be kind of cool. Like, I was in film.
I'm happy to share that. Like, I don't need all those moments. I would rather go to someone that would just really appreciate it and be like the cherry on top for their season or their life or whatever it is. Like, again, if we could have been called to do several things, but Jonathan is a storyteller and I'm a manager, marketer, producer. Like, that is who we are. And so if that's like the role we're stepping into, all the ancillary benefits we are happy to share with the community at large. And like, if anyone hasn't yet read one of Jonathan's books or want to know what he's about, like, be in his Facebook group. He's active in there. He's talking to people. He's like exchanging. They talk to each other. Like, we're very community oriented. He's an introvert, but it means a lot to him to have this community, because it's like, we get to do this because of this community. And so we want to keep doing it for this community. So yeah, that's what we're about.
All right, so I know you're getting late, so I've got 3 last questions for you.
Okay,
One,
cool.
I
I'm
will
like,
tell you, dear. Yeah, it's so one of the things people don't realize is stretch, like, your set goal for a Kickstarter, that can't change, because if you do, you're violating the terms of service. But stretch goals can, because most of the time, if something's a runaway success, like, they didn't plan for it to reach 250,000 or insert wish list dreams, so they didn't have stretch goals that high. And so I remember the Four Horsemen Universe Kickstarter, they had to constantly keep making up new stretch goals as their game. They built a card game thing, I think. But as it kept getting more backing, they kept adding stretch goals because, well, they filled the old ones, so they needed to add more. So if you have certain ideas, when you listen to this episode on Wednesday, the Kickstarter's only been live for a day, and so it's going to be live for 30 days. So if you have ideas for Kickstarters, back the $5 so you're in, and then they can add stretch goals, and you might win a chance for whatever, because there's still room for feedback on the stretch goals. Those are not set in stone, and they have flexibility there. So if there's something you really like, reach out to Jennifer, and I'm sure she's willing to work with you, because she wants your money to fund this project. And that's the cool thing. This is like
Yeah.
venture capital almost. You're the venture capitalist on their film. So they
Yeah. Like, I would like your money to fund this. I want you to be a part of it. Like, I want to have that exchange. I want to be able to like share this adventure together.
So this is airing on the 10th, July 10th. So it closes August 10th or 11th. I can't remember. So we'll assume that you fund from the time the Kickstarter ends to when filming. Like, what is the timeline after the finishing of this Kickstarter going to look like? Obviously, there's a lot of variables, so we're looking more, large picture thing. Like, we take X number of days to roughly do this. Like, what's a rough timeline, do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're in development, and we will be in pre-production by the middle. So we're going to Comic-Con in a couple of weeks. Jonathan's going to be on a panel. We're going to have a table there, so that's going to take up a little bit of our time and attention. But after that, I would say by early August, we'll be in what's considered pre-production, and that's where we're like getting into signing contracts or making agreements with folks and all of that. And then we plan to film at the end of October, and we'll go into post-production after that. And any pickup days, it is our intention to not have any pickup days of filming, but if we needed to add a shot or something based on how editing is going, we could. And we'll go into that. Things will be a little bit sleepy over the holidays. That's just the nature of things. And then we'll be able to start applying to film festivals to start being in them by early next year. In early 2024, it'll be applied.
And to back this Kickstarter, I think I'm going to reach out to Jonathan once I get my Wi-Fi fixed. They're coming out tomorrow, and I will see if I can do an interview just about the Forsaken Mercenary universe, and that way I can tie the two episodes together. So look for that if you're listening to this. I don't know that Jonathan knows it, but Jen and I just volunteered him. We'll have him on to talk about the universe specifically. It does two things for people that haven't read the books. They can learn about the books, and people that back it but haven't read the books and want to. Like, it'll be all of the things funneling into each other. So that is going to be soon.
One of the giveaways, JR, that you remind. There's so many. Is the reward. So you fund you back the project at a certain dollar amount, and one of them is like, if you want to be an author, we have a window for like so many people to write their own kind of Forsaken Mercenary character world, their own mercenary. Kind of think of like Jason Bourne has all these different mercenaries, and into an anthology. So he'll will guide you through that process with your story, and then we'll publish you as an author. So you'll be able to be an author and have gone through with that. I guess we've successful, accomplished publishing company. And so, but in order for people to know what that universe looks like, we're going to give them all the books in the series. And then we found a company that publishes the box set boxes for physical copies, a nice collector edition as well, if somebody wanted to get the 12 books. Like, I'm a reader, I'm excited for this, or I've read the series and I would like something nice to put on my bookshelf, you can do that as well.
And to be clear, so for anyone listening who's on the writer side, what you're paying for when you back that anthology and you back that is, one, you're paying for one-on-one, essentially mentoring with someone who's making it in the business. It's his full-time job. So that has value. And you are paying for the permission to write in a world that presumably, if you're backing this, you love as well. Because there's nothing stopping you from applying to any random anthology. I know I do a couple a year. Like, you could always do that. What you're getting is something special. You're getting the one-on-one mentorship on the story, which, if you're paying for an edit, that can get expensive for developmental editing. And you're getting the right to play in a universe that you like, because the difference between, licensed property and fan fiction is, one, you have permission to write in the world, and two, if he publishes that anthology, is it going to be canon or no? Because that's a big distinction.
We'll do it Jonathan style, where like it's canon if you want to get that close, But if you want to kind of create your own space within the universe, and so the lines don't cross, you have a lot more liberty.
So it's canon in the world, not canon to the specific story. You're writing in the world, but
Yeah.
in the dark corners, and you can get away with more. Okay, so
Yes.
you're getting permission to write essentially in a licensed property, which is can be fun because, like I said, you get readers you might not have otherwise gotten. So I think that has value. Just making sure they understand where the value lies, so they know what they're getting into.
Oh yeah, thank
So
you.
do
You
you?
framed it so well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got lucky. Like my first published series was in someone else's universe, so I had that help, and I didn't realize how valuable it was until I've worked with other authors who've never had that, and I'm like, oh, so I did kind of get lucky. Um, but we're here to talk about Jonathan. So, what are your and you obviously because you're his business manager, but what
Okay.
are your closing thoughts on this Kickstarter that you want people to know before we wrap this up?
Like we're transparent. We are very honest. You can see actually if you want to like what our quality of work is going to be. Check out Infinity System. It's now available on YouTube, so you could see the first film that we did. And it's just like this is going to happen. The train is leaving the station. This is your chance to be a part of it and be part of something exciting that you can feel good about and you could share with just about anybody in your family. Like I would show it to my 3-year-old, but he probably wouldn't be interested. But that's the cool thing is I could share it with my dad, and he would also like be very interested in the story. That like it's something that anyone could enjoy, and so like that I feel like in today's day and age can be hard to come by. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So I will link all of the show note in the show notes. I will link in the show notes all of their social media contacts. I will get with them in post production from this interview and get all of that linked together. But where, other than the Kickstarter page, which I have linked for, where would people go if they're interested more about your work as J.R. Castle, Wolfpack Productions, Archimedes Press, all the things that are you and Jonathan? Like, where do they go to get more?
I don't know. So I would start with like the biggest bit of information is going to be Jonathan's website, Jonathan-Yanez, YANEZ.com would be the main one. And then you can go, if you want film specific, you go to Jonathan-Yanez.com/oh hey. And all of the little links for like the publishing company and the film production company are there too. So you don't have to memorize too many URLs. So Jonathan-Yanez.com/oh hey.
All right, and that will all be linked in the show notes, dear listener. And she's going to fall asleep and turn into a pumpkin soon, and I don't want that. And I forgot to give her time to get coffee because we've been talking for 2 hours having that much fun. But before I let
All
you go,
good.
dear listener, I'd like to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part, people. And that also applies to movies. So if you go over to the movie that he has, the Infinity System, on their YouTube channel, you can go and click the thumbs up button. That helps. Share it with your friends. That helps. Do the same with books. Write reviews. You can leave comments on Jonathan's website, I believe it used to. Can you still do that? Is there still the forum page that used to be there?
No.
Okay.
But you can go,
So,
yeah, but you can go on Facebook or YouTube, both of them, or you can email him if you have some thoughts
there you
and you
go.
don't want to go social. Please, yeah, there's an email form right up front. You can send him an email and let him know what's up.
Yeah, and people don't realize it when you write your reviews on Amazon terms of service say that they're for Amazon's website, and I couldn't, as an author, use quotes from a review posted there unless I have express written permission from the person who posted it, meaning like they told me to. So if you have reviews and you want to say, you know what, I really like this, here's my thoughts, and feel free to use this in ad copy, like that has value too. So if you want to do your part and you write a well thought out review, like that's one way to reach out and do that, because I always make a caveat. Like when I write them, I have no problem if the authors mind the hell out of it for one-liners. I mean, I tend not to write my reviews that succinctly, but I mentioned that to say if you wanted to do that to help, that'd be one cool thing you could do is say, this was X meets Y, and I loved it, and it could have been, more perfect, whatever. Like that's one way you can help. So with that being said, you can find us over on our link tree where we collaborate and cohesively link all the things. It's linktree, linktr.ee Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree / Blasters and Blades podcast. I will hyperlink on that Linktree our BitChute account, which is new and slowly mirroring all of our YouTube over there, and all of the audio well, I guess the podcast is the same thing, and Rumble. YouTube does not like it when I link to those, so the Linktree gets around that. But we do have a BitChute and we do have a Rumble. Tech support, if you listen to our update, I said we weren't going to mess with it because it didn't take long for them. Tech support got back to me and they're working with me. They saw the value in our podcast and all 300 hours plus of content to get ported over. So they're like, yeah, we'll work with you. I'm going to assume that was just for me and not that they would have done that for anybody that asks, because we're special. We are over on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. Again, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group where all of the shenanigans happen over at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Jonathan also has a group, which I will link to in the show notes because he's very active over there. If you ever wanted to talk to the author you like reading, that is the place to do it. And he does interactive interviews of himself to you at least once a month on the Facebook Live feature. And if I can pressure Jennifer enough, maybe one day he'll put that on his YouTube page as well.
Oh yeah.
But those are always available. So if you wanted more, in depth, that's sort of the way to do it for Jonathan. We have a Facebook page, which is separate from the group, which doesn't have a dedicated URL yet. But if you Google or if you type in the search bar on Facebook, Blasters and Blades podcast, there's a page as well where we share book reviews, we share our episodes, we ramble incoherently about all things sci-fi and fantasy. And we have our website at anchor.fm/blasters-tack-and-tack-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-tack-and-tack-blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. These podcasts are not free to produce. There is some overhead, and we appreciate it when you defray the costs. Or you could support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly caffeinated. They will drink until their liver explodes or wherever your kidneys, I don't know. I wasn't a biologist, people, whatever processes your coffee addiction. And with that being said, thank you, Jennifer, for coming on. We really appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
Jonathan's going to be sorry he missed this 2-hour interview. But you, dear listener, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For the absentee Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.